Okay, it's August 30th, 2024. I'm with Mr. John J. Jeckovich, and we're reading his mother's son's book. And Mr. Jeckovich was a World War II veteran, combat soldier. He's knocking on the door of 100 years old. He's from Company H, 2nd Battalion, 291st Regiment of the 75th Infantry Division of the U.S. Army during World War II. Mr. Jeckovich lives by the theory all his life, very simple theory, that yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift.
Today is a gift. Huh?
Today is a gift.
Yeah.
What's your dog tag number, Mr. Jeckovich?
40965.
Okay, that'll open up the book, and this is Docu-Series 324, and we're on page 468 of Mr. Jeckovich's book that he wrote over 25 years ago, Chapter 16, Civilian Life Once Again. Civilian Life Once Again. Did you want me to read, or do you want to read, Mr. Jeckovich?
You read it, go ahead.
Okay. Anytime when I'm reading, if there's something interesting you want to say about your words,
Go ahead.
Just stop me and tell the story. I walked along the side of the road. Now, Mr. Jeckovich is back in Niagara Falls after serving World War II, Battle of Bulge. I walked along the side of the road as there was still furrows on each side of the road from the plowed snow. It was a short walk to where I turned into the alley, and where my house was, the fourth from the corner, I did notice that a person was shoveling his driveway, but he saw me approaching from afar. He shoved his square-bladed snow shovel into the snowbank and went back into the house. It bothered me slightly. Who was that, by the way?
They pull like on the corner.
Okay. It bothered me slightly, but I dismissed it once again and continued my walk the short distance up the alley to where I lived. Here was the ageless, once white picket fence and gate, still serving as a barrier to the world. I entered the backyard and walked along the rectangular cement block sidewalk I helped my father install so long ago. That sidewalk's still there today, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Some blocks were heaved from the freezer-thawed cycle, and others were cracked or missing a piece. If you put too much sand in a mix of your cement, would the cement sidewalks not last as long?
No, they're weak. They're weak.
So you have to have the right formula.
Yeah, right formula, yeah.
And most of your sidewalks that you and your father built, you hand mixed it yourself.
No.
Yeah. I thought it must still be miserable to shovel snow from its irregular surface, and it appeared it had not been shoveled for a while, since the warmth from the sun was thawing the snow from its surface. So now you're getting home and the sidewalk's still there, has some cracks in it, but no one shoveled the snow. It was just no one shoveled the snow of the sidewalk. It was just the sun that was thawing it out.
Yeah.
I tried the back door knowing that it would be locked and reached for the key in the milk box. Was that a square milk box, like aluminum in color, that you for your house had milk delivered to daily?
How's that military?
No, the milk box.
That's in Orleans. Yeah.
Who was the milk company?
It was Ellie.
Okay. It came in a glass bottle?
Huh?
The milk came in a glass bottle?
Yeah.
Yeah. Next door, and nestled between the empty milk bottles. The door lock turned hard as it needed to be lubricated. So now you notice that door mechanism's not even working right, so you have to lubricate it to loosen its mechanism from the long winter days and nights. The familiar smell still lingered there as I entered a small hallway and entrance. I had not smelled it in several years, but quickly came back to me. What does it smell like?
Somebody was cooking.
Okay. I climbed the three linoleum-covered steps to the kitchen door, reached for the key atop the molding, and unlocked it. The kitchen was the same, the spattered color linoleum on the floor screaming its welcome to me. I just stood there and stared forlornly at it. The cupboard counters matched the floor, and the dull whitened woodwork throughout the kitchen stirred memories of events long past and dismissed. The old refrigerator was still humming away. Was the old refrigerator like the type that has a freezer on the top, the refrigerator below, and it's round in shape?
Yeah.
I have some of those in my shop, and they just go forever.
Yeah.
Still, they're 100 years old, and they just go. It's just amazing, those things, how they're built. I just stood there and stood. The kitchen stirred memories of events long past and dismissed. The old refrigerator was still humming away, and I opened its door to peek inside. There was all too familiar half-empty quart bottle of made-up orange juice sitting on the shelf alongside a full quart of milk. There were other items, covered dishes of leftover food, a bowl of jello for tonight's supper, and some potatoes and onions in the bottom drawer. I had not eaten since last night at the separation center, but somehow I was not hungry. I walked into the dining room, and I could feel the heat coming out of one of the registers along the inside wall. It smelled familiar of mixed coal and wood slowly simmering in the firebox in the furnace. The furniture was the same, with its buffet and china closet and opposite walls, and a dining table in the center room beneath the ceiling light. The living room had not changed, and everything looked much more drab and uncomfortable. The radio was still in its usual place, and the rug in the center of the floor was the same, except more faded and worn. I peeked into the two bedrooms, first my mother's and then the other, and I felt an awful sense of despair and dismay. Was this all worth it, to come home to this? After sleeping in foxholes and barns, freezing half to death, only to obtain the semblance of living. For certain I would not bring either Anne or Jean, and certainly not Renee, into this environment. My instincts were correct. I did the right thing by them, and I was grateful for that. I went down to the basement, and certainly was not a reflection of orderliness or a manageable undertaking. There are ashes strewn about the floor of the furnace, and the wood pile was in disarray and quite low as was the coal pile. When I opened the ash pit door, ashes were almost to the bottom of the furnace grates. So basically, no one's been caring for the furnace.
No.
Would eventually the furnace shut off if it wasn't?
Oh, yeah,
clean?
no air.
No air, yeah. So that was your first job, right?
Yeah.
That was your first job, to clean up the furnace,
Take
right?
the ashes out of the bottom.
Yeah. What did you do with the ashes?
Put them in the street, in the alley, put holes.
Okay, so there's holes in the alley, and you fill the holes with these ashes.
Yeah.
Open the foyer. Is that what everyone did?
Huh?
Is that what everyone on the street did? They filled the holes with their ashes?
Probably, yeah, probably.
Okay. Opening a fire door disclosed a warm, glowing coal burning slowly. Baked from the previous night, I looked up and saw my initials etched in the overhead beam. So you took a hot,
Poker and put my initials, JJ.
right above the furnace, right?
Yeah,
Still there.
yeah.
Still there today.
Yeah, well, should be, yeah.
Not going nowhere. I stared at it for a moment, thinking how much I had changed since burning these letters several years ago. I took the poker and retraced the burned etching with it, revealing a moment a lifetime away. What were you, about 13 or 14 when you...
What?
Were you about 13 or 14 when you etched your initials?
Yeah, yeah.
The furnace itself looked worn out from its rusty outer shaker arm, which moved the grates to drop the burned coal into the ash pit. You eventually converted that to oil, right?
Oil and gas, yeah.
Yeah. To the same fan motor atop the furnace bonnet that forced the hot air upward into the room. The fan belt was worn and brittle, so the fan belt was ready to break,
Yeah.
and the motor air tanks were plugged with dust and cobwebs. So it must have took you a good 2 or 3 days to get that thing in order.
Yeah.
The makeshift workbench was still intact, along with the spare parts sitting atop and a small cupboard I made so long ago. I thought an electrical switch I had gotten from Patricia, the downstairs tenant, and what ensued after. There were papers and bottles and bits of junk lying around. The surface was cluttered and disheveled. All in all, it was a forlorn picture. I had great misgivings about my returning. It reminded me of my last time here on my furlough, before shipping overseas. I wanted then, as to now, to pick up my duffel bag and leave forever, perhaps Owensboro, or even rejoining the Army. Now was the time to do it, and no one would be aware of my presence here. But for some strange reason or compulsion, I could not leave. I was reminded of Renee when she talked about her controlled desire and motivation to seek out a religious vocation. Did you ever think about seeking out a religious vocation?
The what?
Did you ever think about seeking out a religious vocation?
Sneaking out of religious?
Did you ever think about becoming a priest?
No, no.
I longed to be back in her warm, friendly kitchen with its blazing fire in the fireplace, sitting at the large kitchen table, looking across at her long legs, elegantly crossed her silk stockings, shimmering in a pale glow from the fireplace. I once thought that this very old and decrepit furnace was my warmest friend. I now chuckled at its revelation. Suddenly it struck me that perhaps the best part of my life had just ended, and everything that would follow would only be anticlimactic and to my exit from this world. Looking at the basement, I saw nothing that inspired or gave me a feeling of euphoria to be back here. All I could see were objects linked to the past memories, none of them worthwhile, and certainly none that I could look upon now with great favor or zeal. I went back upstairs as I climbed the cellar stairs, and it came upon me with great force and trepidation that I would sleep here tonight. And then the next stand by. And, okay, here we go. And the next night, there'd be no more peace of mind associated with an army billet or the relaxed atmosphere of not having to watch every move and be careful what I uttered. This was it, my home. What I had great dread and consternation to return had finally come to be. No matter how hard I tried, I could not escape it. It was mid-afternoon, and Sally would be returning from school shortly, following my mother a little later on. I had written in my last letter a month ago that I'd be returning home in late March, so they knew about my arrival. I felt the pang of hunger, but dismissed it since I did not want to forage in the refrigerator, recalling the past episode when I was on furlough. What was the past episode on furlough?
On the orange juice.
What happened?
I took a glass of orange juice out of the refrigerator.
And you got in trouble for that?
Yeah.
So you don't want to duplicate that?
I don't do that again, no.
Okay. I looked back into the bedroom anticipating the sleeping arrangements. That would have to be altered due to my return. From what I could see, Sally slept in one of the two beds still in the room, and at a glance at a small closet reinforced the assumption. Some of my civilian clothes were still hanging in a cedar closet. In a corner, I fingered them apprehensively. I did not disturb anything. I walked back to the kitchen and sat in one of the 4 chairs around the table. Once you're back, you always stay in civilian clothes now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How different this was compared to the other kitchens I had sat in under much more happier conditions. I did not want to think of that. That was in the past, and I must concentrate on here and now. If I got myself in a despondent mood, I knew it would be that much more difficult to face Mother, as I knew she would pick up on it. Even so, I was heartsick and miserable. I did not want to be here, but I had no place else to go. Just then I heard footsteps outside hallway and jumbling of the keys in the door lock. The door opened and a tall teenager walked into the kitchen. It was my sister Sally. She had grown taller and filled out somewhat, a considerable change from several years ago. I knew immediately that she had taken after my father, both in looks and personality. So she was very outgoing.
Yeah.
Okay. And your mother was reserved.
Yeah.
Okay. I hugged her and kissed her on the cheek, and she seemed pleased to see me again. We chatted about the usual small talk. Then she inquired about my experiences in the service. Naturally, I was vague and non-committal. After a while, she went into the bathroom to change and returned to say that she was due at her girlfriend's house and would be back before Mother returned from work.
10 minutes.
How all these were repeat how all of this was repeat of time of my furlough struck me at once. I thought nothing had changed, and I had been a fool to think otherwise. After Sally left, I walked around the house, getting more depressed the longer I stayed in its surroundings. What I was feeling was not new. I anticipated it, but I guess I was not fully prepared for it I was not fully prepared for it to be so severe and grim. But now my stomach was growling, which added to my anguish and discomfort. But I dared to get something to eat. I finally settled for a glass of cold water. Remembering how cold the tap water got in the winter, I ran to water for a while and filled the glass. So now you're home and the only thing you have is a glass of water.
Yeah.
I got out of the cupboard. I could see that it was cold, and the outer surface of the glass became misted. The water tasted good, and I drank several glasses. For those years, you always had great cold water.
Yeah.
But then as time went on, it was problems with chemicals and things.
Yeah.
Especially Love Canal.
Yeah.
Which refreshed me somewhat. I rinsed the glass out, wiped it dry with a paper towel, and returned it to its proper place in the cupboard. I heard a car stop outside in front of the house. I presumed it was Mother returning from work. She would occasionally get a ride home, but mostly walked to and from work, even in the cold winter months. Your mother must have been in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
All this walking?
Yeah.
All
Walk all the time.
All this working, walking, and everything else? The kitchen door opened and Mother entered. She looked the same except for being a little heavier, but not to the extent I would call her fat. I could still smell the familiar odor that she brought with her from work on her clothes. The smell of sandpaper and glue permeated everything. She appeared shorter than I remembered, and I could still see that she looked. Still smelled like sandpaper and glue. She appeared shorter, and I remembered, and I could still see the look of despair in her eyes, and it was always with her. I hugged her for a moment and she kissed me on the cheek. She started to cry. I wondered if it was from joy at seeing me home safely, or more from the mere fact she was once again relieved of many of the responsibilities that had been thrust upon me until I went into the service. We talked for a while, and she wanted to be certain that I was home for good, not just another furlough. I reassured her that I was out of the Army and a civilian once again. She must have been very happy that you're out and you made it alive. It was probably your mother's prayers that kept you alive. She felt both relieved and apprehensive at the prospect of me being home. Mother made a special spaghetti dinner that night to celebrate my homecoming. I don't even have to ask what your mother's spaghetti was probably really good. I wouldn't have to ask because she was a cook, right? I felt happy for her, and I could see the relief in her face as she looked forward at me. Her spaghetti was pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
Homemade, thick sauce.
Yeah.
Did she serve anything with it besides spaghetti?
Salad.
And then any rolls?
And then chocolate cake.
How about any rolls?
Yeah.
So she did a nice job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought she would. Okay, let's see. To celebrate my homecoming, I felt happy for her, and I could see the relief in her face as she looked at me. assuming I would take over all the chores she so disliked. I was a little aggravated and annoyed as to why I was singled out to perform these duties when both of my brothers were excluded from any responsibilities. I know that Sally was also in the same category as my brothers, as they all seemed to be living in a world of their own choosing. I believe Mother saw the same thing and gave her a sensation of isolation and helplessness. For a flickering, fleeting moment that night, I gained a glimmering insight of why I felt compelled, yes, even obligated to return and stay. For that first time, I saw in Mother's face the reflection of helplessness and despair which I so often witnessed in the people of France and Germany during the war. It seemed as though they were caught up in the vortex of the war and with nowhere to turn to for help or guidance. What left for them was misery, isolation, and finally death. This is what I saw in my mother's eyes tonight, and her stubborn defiance to remain singularly independent state the reality of her situation. She realized she could not depend on 3 of her 4 children. That's ironic.
Yeah.
That's what turned out in your life. You had 4 children, and 3 out of the 4 disappeared.
Yeah.
Isn't that ironic?
Yeah.
And you had 3
Out of the
boys.
pattern.
Yeah, you had 3 boys. Your mother had 3 boys and 1 girl. You had 3 boys and 1 girl. And those 3 disappeared on your mother,
Yeah.
and now 3 disappeared. Nowhere's to be found on you. That's really something. That is a pattern. She realized throughout the remainder of her life, okay, here we go. She realized that she could not depend on 3 of her 4 children to help sustain her throughout the remainder of her life. So she clutched desperately at the one remaining positive alternative. Of course, I resented it all, but I did nothing about it. I was not long before I was back in the same routine that I resolved I would never return to. That first night at home, I slept on a couch, the same as I had on furlough. Okay, so now it's coming back on me. You were on furlough, and you had to sleep on the couch. And now you're permanently home, and you have to sleep on the couch until you find some type of...
Bed.
Yeah. Sally would need time to adjust to me being home and how we arranged the sleeping accommodations. I slept very little that night, as I felt I was among strangers in a strange unknown place. I thought about Renee and how much I missed her.
1 minute, 30 seconds.
I thought about Renee and how much I missed her and what she was doing that very moment. I also thought how I botched up my life in not grasping a few opportunities that were afforded me. I dreamed that night that I was back in Ardennes, where Fink got killed, and I woke up in a cold sweat and shivering. The dreams have haunted and tantalized me for the longest time, and I would not get rid of them until the early part of my marriage. And well, those are like PSTT, right? Yeah, that's what you had, right?
Yeah.
But then I wasn't recognizable then.
No.
Now it's recognizable.
Yeah.
Ask him how it is now.
How is it now?
How's it now?
Yeah.
Still recognized.
I mean, do you still have dreams and nightmares of the war?
Do what?
Do you still have nightmares of the war when you sleep?
I had a couple nightmares, yeah.
See, isn't that funny? 80 years,
Yeah.
and it's still going on. PSTD. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. You only got 28 seconds.
Oh,
That is amazing.
that is amazing.
You never get rid of it.
After 80 years, it's haunted you. 80 years, those nightmares haunted you,
Yeah.
right? That's unbelievable. That's a hard way to sleep.
What do you tell
Oh,
them?
seconds?
9.
Let me walk it down, just let it go. Unbelievable.